Choosing a visa is, to be very frank, pain in the ass. There's a ton of information out there, and what you read or get told by one lawyer is totally contradicted by someone or something else. And as I've said in previous videos, I believe strong immigration laws are incredibly important, and those who successfully immigrate should be top talent that deserve to be in the country. But it's incredibly hard to even figure out what visa to choose because of the incredibly dense amount of information. So let's get into how I chose my visa. So it's 2023 and I've decided I want to move. I've done some light Googling and realized I'm in way over my head. And I did this a few times before realizing that step number one is knowing that I could not do this without a lawyer. So before you Google yourself into a frenzy, just talk to a lawyer. Talk to a few lawyers. Consultations are free and they know what they're talking about. So step number two, how did I find a lawyer? I asked everyone. I got a number of recommendations from people who had already immigrated, friends who are lawyers, and every second degree connection I could think of. I knew I could ask just about anyone in San Francisco because everyone here knows someone who immigrated and used a lawyer to do so. So this moves into step three, consultations. Initially, I spoke to 5 lawyers, and they all asked me the same stuff about my educational background, my work, my reason for moving, and so on. And to be honest, some lawyers are mean, and some just told me it wouldn't be possible for me and I wasn't qualified enough. But typically, they'll ask a number of questions to begin the process of elimination for visa selection. So the conversations usually go a little bit like this. They ask, tell me a little bit about yourself. What did you study? Why do you want to be in the United States? And then they'll talk about why you do or don't qualify for each visa option available. This leads us into the next step, figuring out what visa you qualify for. So let me break down the main visa categories that were discussed for me. First one is the H-1B, called the Specialty Occupation Visa. This is the most common work visa for skilled professionals, and it requires a bachelor's degree or something equivalent in a specific field. And it also must be sponsored by U.S. employer for said specialty occupation. But this one is hard to get. It's a lottery visa. It's subject to an annual lottery system with a cap of 85,000 visas per year. And this lottery is extremely competitive. Often only 20 to 30% of people actually get the visa. This visa, like I said, is also tied to your employer. Though once you are here, it is slightly easier to just transfer it to a new employer. The H-1B can also eventually lead to a green card, but the process takes many, many years. The next option, which is the first option lawyers usually spoke about with me since I'm Canadian, is the TN visa. This is also called the NAFTA professional visa. It's available only to Canadian Mexican citizens, and it requires a job offer in one of the designated professional categories, of which there are tons. And it's based on having specific educational credentials that match your profession. It's a relatively straightforward process, but it's limited to certain occupations. And it's also a temporary visa. You have to go home. The TN wasn't an option for me because my educational background doesn't match what I do, so I was always quickly like, I cannot do a TN to every lawyer. But they always did try. The next visa option is the L1 visa. This is called the intra-company transferee visa. So this is for employees transferring from a foreign office to a US office of the same company. It requires at least 1 year of employment with the company abroad, and there are 2 subcategories, L1A for managers and L1B for specialized knowledge workers. And this is tied to your employer. So if you lose your job, you lose your visa status and you need to go home. But this visa can eventually lead to a green card. This was a visa that I looked at because I worked for an American company in a foreign office in Canada for at least a year before I was deciding to move to the United States and continue to work for that employer in the United States. There were some reasons I didn't do it, and I'll get into it later, but let's get into the next visa. The next visa option is the O1 visa, also known as the Extraordinary Ability Visa. Like the name says, it's for individuals with extraordinary ability in things like sciences, art, education, business, or athletics. It requires demonstrating a sustained national or international claim, and you have to meet a set of criteria with a ton of evidence required. But the nice thing about the O1 is it doesn't have to be tied to a specific employer like the L1 does, so it provides a little bit more flexibility and mobility in the visa. But it is an incredibly documentation-intensive application process. The last visa option I looked at is the E2 visa, also called the Treaty Investor Visa. And this is for individuals investing a substantial amount of capital in a US business. And the amount of capital changes all the time. Some people say you need $1 million, some people say you only need 100,000. So I'm not really sure. Speak to a lawyer. And you must be a national of a country with which the US has a treaty that you can do this with. It requires developing and directing the investment enterprise, and the investment must be at risk and active. All of that fancy jargon is basically just saying you have to own and run a business actively in the United States, which you invest money in, and demonstrate that that business is more than just for generating income for yourself. So basically, you have to demonstrate that you will probably hire and employ more people, and it's a useful business to the United States. So for me, as I investigated a little bit more and spoke to lawyers, I could have qualified for an L1 visa, which in hindsight, I could have done and it may have been easier. But I wanted to plan for the long term and I'm highly risk averse. So I wanted to have mobility if I lost my job for any reason. So I chose an O1 visa. This is definitely a visa that requires slightly more effort, but I don't have a university degree that matches my job. So I needed to get a visa that wasn't the TN, which most Canadians get because it's relatively easy to qualify for. So by process of elimination, I landed on the O1. And like I said before, the O1 has a number of requirements that you need to meet to get the visa. And you must meet at least 3 of the following 8 criteria: awards and prizes, meaning being nationally or internationally recognized for something in your field; membership, so being a member of associations that require outstanding achievement as judged by experts in the field. 3 is having published materials, so being published in professional or major trade publications about you and your work. Number 4 is judging, so participating as a judge of the work of others in the same field as you are in. Number 5, original contributions, having evidence of original scientific, scholarly, artistic, athletic, or business-related contributions of major significance. Number 6 is scholarly articles, so authoring scholarly articles. Number 7 is critical employment, employment in a critical or essential capacity for organizations with a distinguished reputation. Number 8 is high salary. Do you make a lot of money? Once I decided that I could qualify for an O1, I worked with a lawyer to demonstrate that I qualified for 4 of those criteria and provided them with mountains of emails, work products, websites, news articles, and information that demonstrated it. It then took them 3 months to put together the package, which was over 200 pages long. But the choice to pursue an O1 was one that I chose for longevity's sake, as I knew I wanted to remain in the United States even if my job situation changed. So that's how it worked for me. The immigration process is complex and individual circumstances vary greatly. This is just my personal opinion, and you really shouldn't take it as legal advice because I paid to have lots of legal advice to do this. I think everyone should always consult a qualified immigration attorney for their specific situation. But thanks for watching.